Welcome everyone to the program Surya Savitri, and I welcome everyone from um, India, my friends and colleagues, and also those who have joined from US and Europe. Um, Warm welcome from Bengal Leadership Forum. I will do a very short introduction, which we generally do a kind of ritual chanting, and after that we will move into the program. ॐ गुरुब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुर्गुरुदेवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परं ब्रह्मा तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः गुरवे सर्वलोकानां भिषजे भवरोगिणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां दक्षिणमूर्तये नमः सदाशिवसमारम्भ्यां श्रीकण्ठचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मादचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् मन्त्रमूलं गुरुर्वाक्यं पूजमूलं गुरुः पदं ध्यानमूलं गुरुर्मूर्तिमोक्षमूलं गुरुकृपा सद्गुरुचरणारविन्द्यपादुक्याभ्यां नमः ॐ गणानां त्वा गणपतिं गुम्भमाहे कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवस्तमम् ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां ब्रह्मणस्पता न शृण्वन्नुतिभिः सिद्धसाधनां ॐ श्रीमहागणपतये नमः. With grace of my Guruji and Mother and Sri Aurobindo, we start this program. Before anything, I would just read out a little bit of the darshan message today, which those who have gone to the ashram have received this beautiful darshan card, the message. So I'll just read it out because it is very apt of what we are going to talk about in the coming 1 hour or so. So the message goes like this. There is one divine force which acts in the universe and in the individual and is also beyond the individual and the universe. The mother stands for all three, but she is working here in the body to bring down something not yet expressed in this material world so as to transform life here. It is so that you should all regard her as the divine Shakti working here for that purpose. She is that in the body, but in her whole consciousness, she is also identified with all the other aspects of the divine force. As we know from the lines of Savitri, she is the golden bridge, the wonderful fire, the luminous heart of the unknown is she. She is the magnet of our difficult ascent. So with this, and that's the significance of Surya Savitri. We start the program, and thank you everyone, Dr. Aditi Kaul and Jonathan and Shayna is joining us, and Dr. Soumitro Basu later in the program. Um, they will illuminate us on different aspects of Mother and Sri Aurobindo's vision. I'll go to the program. There will be a short, brief presentation which is going on at this point of time when the songs will be taking, which captures a little brief sketch of Mother's journey and Mother meeting Sri Aurobindo in 1914. Prior to that, Mother meeting Max Theon in Algeria, and a process of Ashadana which started at the age of 5 and 7 and 8 and 9 years when she writes an essay, The Path for later on. Um, so, little bit of information there, historical incidents and events, and some photographs. So keep a eye on that. And now I would ask Srimati Bani Dutta to do her Guru Vandana, and then we can start with the program's proceedings. Banidi, please, you can make your offering now.
Thank you for giving me opportunity to pay my obeisance to Divine Mother and Sri Aurobindo on Mother's birthday. This song Guru Vandana is my offering to them. Vande Sri Guru Dev Ki Charanam Vande Sri Guru Dev चरणं ज्ञानाञ्जनदेहि अन्धकीनयनं ज्ञानाञ्जनदेहि अन्धकीनयनम् अन्धपाटा खुले बन्धनहरणम् अन्धपाटा खुले बन्धनहरणम् महिमा अपार न जावत वर्णन महिमा अपार न जावत वर्णन वंदे श्री गुरुदेव की चरणं अज्ञान मोह मोहावेश शमनम् अज्ञान मोह मोहावेश शमनम् दुर्लभ नाम शुनायक श्रवणम् दुर्लभ नाम शुनायक श्रवणम् दुस्तरुये भवसागर तरणम् दुस्तरुये भवसागर तरणम् वन्दे श्री गुरु चरणं कमलं वन्दे श्री गुरु चरणं कमलं वन्दे श्री गुरु देवकी चरणम्.
Thank you for that beautiful Guru Vandana. As Mother said, the whole of our life should be a prayer offered to the divine, and that's the perfect Guru Vandana we can have. Now, I would ask Mayukh Mukherjee, who is an eminent singer, and Mayukh would do the chanting from Devisuktam, Rigveda 10 Mandala, which is attributed to Vakamrini, one of the earliest Vedic seer poets. And she's a female poet, so it's a representation, the symbolic representation, and an incarnation also of the Divine Mother. So, Mayukh, I would now ask you to do your presentation.
With this Devishuktam from Rig Veda, invoke the Divine Mother, the Parashakti, and let her work for the transformation of the world. This is my offering on Mother's birthday. Om अहं रुद्रेर्विवसो सराम्यहम् आदित्यै ऋतविश्वदेव्यै अहं मित्रावरुणो विभर्म्यहम् इन्द्राग्नि अहमश्विनो अहं सोममाहनसं विभर्म्यहम् त्वष्टारमुतपूषणम् भगम् अहं दधामि द्रविणम् हविष्मते सुप्राव्य यजमानय सुन्मतेऽहं राष्ट्रे सङ्गमनिव सोना चिकितुषे प्रथमा यज्ञानामतं मदेव्य व्यदधो पुरुत्रा भूर्या तान्भूरियावेशयन्तीं मया सो अन्नमत्ते यो विपश्यति यः प्राणितेरैं श्रीणोक्तुक्तम् अमन्तको मात उपक्षीयन्ते श्रुधि श्रुत श्रद्धिवन्ते वदामि अहमेव स्वयमिदं वदामि जुष्टं देवे धिरुतमानुषेभि यं यं कामये तं तमुग्रं कृणोमि तं ब्रह्माणम् त्वमिश्रिं त्वं सुमेधाम्यहं रुद्राय धनुरा तनोमि ब्रह्मद्वेषे शर्वे हन्तवाओ अहं जनाय समदं कृणोम्यहं द्यावा पृथिवीयाविवेश अहं सुवे पितरमस्य मूर्धन मम योनिरपस्तो समुद्रे ततो वितिष्ठे भुवनानुविश्व त्वमोद्यां वष्णनो पश्प्रेषामि अहमेव वात इव प्रभाम्या रवमाना भुवनानि विश्व परो दिवा परो येन पृथिवी तावती महिना संबभूव इति ऋग्वेदोक्तं देवी सूक्तं समाप्तम्.
That's a beautiful rendition. It takes us to that complete different kind of ambience where spirit and matter, which is spirit and what is matter, you won't be able to distinguish between them. And yet a third door opens up, which is the illumination of the new species on earth, as Prem put it, and mother or the divine materialism. Without him I exist not, without me he is unmanifest, as mother says. So it is very difficult to distinguish between what is spirit and what is matter in such an ambience. Thank you, Mayukh, for the beautiful rendition. And we are very fortunate to have these singers with us. Now I would go to Dr. Aditi Kaul. Madam is working in areas of psychology on Mother and Sri Aurobindo's vision. Uh, uh, we can stop the presentation now. So, yes, Madam, I would now invite you to give a talk on the aspects of mother, the four great aspects of mother, and the psychological symbolism underlying it.
Namaste, everyone. Gratitude for having me here on this occasion of Mother's birthday to share her love and grace with all of you here. The topic which was given to me is to share about the four aspects and the psychological symbolism. Just talking about mother in her individual form, like all of us have gathered here to celebrate her birthday, her birth in the human form. We all know that she is much vaster and wider than the human form. The Divine Mother chose to take an individual form, a human form, and walk on this planet, to be near us, to teach us. She became a human with all the limitations the human being has so that she can help us grow, help us realize our own divine nature. Her individual form had the power of the universal and the transcendental mother. And that is how we know her. That is how we feel her near us, though she's not in a physical body anymore. And that is why, after so many years, we still celebrate the joy of her physical birth. The divine aspect or the universal aspect, the powers which we know, her are the Lakshmi, Mahasaraswati, Mahakali, Maheshwari. These are the names which we have heard, her divine powers. Now, how do we understand those divine powers in our everyday life? How do we bring them to our everyday life? We have so much of adoration, a sense of worship, a sense of love to all the aspects of the mother. But if you have understood one thing which the mother wanted from her children was to practice what she has taught us, to actually bring the love what she has poured on all of us to this manifestation, to simply open ourselves to the divine influence, our earthly nature, so that she can work through us. The grace can work through us and make us those instruments who are valuable as we are doing. On a universal level, if we look at it from, say, the psychological symbolism or the hidden reality of the psychology behind those, we can look at them as Aurobindo has asked us to look at them as wisdom, harmony, perfection, the strength, all those powers, how they come together. Now, the question comes in that all of these things we know. So, there's an integral philosophy which we become aware of. Now, when we practice that philosophy, it becomes psychology, which is our day to day activity. So, what do we do? How do we decode the psychological understanding of these powers? And the moment we bring in the word psychology, the four aspects or the powers and personalities of the Divine Mother translates into the human form or the human personality you and I have. And when we talk about the human personality, our normal understanding is how we behave, what we think, how we feel. So our understanding of human personality is very limited to our outer understanding of the structure, what we see, what we feel. And that is where our sense of identification lies. That, okay, I think a lot. So, okay, I'm a thinker. I should do something which is more of idea based work. Okay, I am more of creative. I can visualize things. I can channelize things. Okay, I should be something into the creatives. Oh, I really like to execute things. I am somebody who can really, given to me a structure, I can just put that force in structure and channelize things. So, okay, I should do something which is more into channelizing. Or if you give me all the resources, you tell me how to do it, I will immediately execute it. So there are different aspects of our own personality. And once we realize that, okay, this is what my personality is, or this is what I'm good at, we immediately attach our sense of identity to that. That is what we become. And that is how we are also identified in the world. Mostly, if you look at very basic thing as simple as our introduction, if somebody asks you your introduction, the first thing that comes to you is what you do. So what you do becomes your introduction, not who you are, because who you are is really intermixed with what you do. We don't have that distinction because our identity is so much enmeshed with our actions that we forget that behind the action is also a deeper aspect of our personality that lies in. And that is precisely what integral psychology or the integral personality aspect tells us, that we are not confined to the very limited understanding of who we are based on our action, but there's much more wider aspect behind it. So, how we tend to classify or categorize human beings, not just us, but people around us, based on the functionality of an individual, the integral framework or the personality aspects which you're talking about takes us from the functionality to the composition of an individual. What is the individual composed of? And Mother's Grace helps us to link the composition with the functionality. So I am not just the tiny limited individual which I think I am on the outside. That might be my entry point. But what looks like an integrated personality, what looks like a true instrument of the divine, is how all these aspects of the mother can work through us. So the beginning has to be made. The entry point or the reference point can be a functionality that, okay, I'm good at it. Especially in the corporates, you must have seen that there's a whole setup where the people who are at the idea level who give us ideas that, okay, this can be done like this can be done like this. Then there are people who are kind of building the structure around the idea. So you give them the idea, then they will build a structure that, okay, this idea needs this structure, these resources. Then you will have people in your organization which can channelize that structure, that how can you execute that structure. So what are the resources required, who is the right person, so the linking. So if you look at from the mother's aspect, the powers, how they work, so there's wisdom, which is calm, which is wide. So there's a huge sense of wideness around from where you receive the idea that, okay, this is an idea which can be worked upon. Then comes the force, the strength required to build the structure for that idea to take form. Like how in the beginning I spoke about the universal mother took an individual form so that she can be on the earth to change the earthly nature, to make the earth inhabit ready for the divine. So that is how it happens at the human level. That once we have the idea, we have the structure, the strength to really create that structure. And then the element of harmony comes in, the element of beauty, the element of rhythm. That, okay, I have this structure, but is this structure organized well enough? Is everything what is required is at the right place? So it's not just a covering that, okay, on the outside I've just put a picture that it is perfect, but what is behind the picture is a mess. And that is why harmony becomes the linking factor of all the powers. And it is the most important power which Mother has spoken about. And she has given numerous references of how harmony in the physical is very, very important. And when we look behind the harmony on the outside, we realize that from a psychological perspective, what essentially she's talking about is the harmony within the individual. We understand that in the integral framework, we talk about the mind, the vital, the physical, the different aspects of our personality, which we are not aware of how they interact with each other. We just identify with the tiny little aspect of our personality on the outside and we think that is we are. But the moment we start on the path, the moment we start turning towards her that, oh, Mother, help me progress, help me purify my personality, help me purify my desires, help me purify my thoughts. The moment we have that aspiration, the moment we turn towards the mother, the moment when we offer ourselves to the mother, we see that there's so much in our personality that starts coming out. We become aware of the disharmony within us. It is often, we have read that Mother has spoken about that the moment you start aspiring for one quality, the most you see in yourself is the opposite of it. And that becomes an indicator that yes, you're on the right path. So if I'm really aspiring for harmony in my being, all of those things which will come out is the maximum disharmony in me. Everything which I want to come out, that becomes the process of purification. That is when the mother says that you come to me, you come with all your impurities. Don't put a perfect face in front of me that, oh, mother, everything is nice, oh, I adore you. Bring to me your imperfections. I am there to purify. I am there to work through you. I'm there to pour all my love to you. So, harmony becomes the most important of the aspects of the mother to make us a fit instrument for the divine to work through us. And once we become aware of the disharmony, we realize that how little are we making use of the instrument which we have been gifted with. Such a tiny portion of our mind are we using. Usually, when we look at in our own everyday life, we see that we often find that our mind and vital is in conflict. Our mind is not really following what maybe I'm feeling, or my feelings are not really following what my mind is saying. So there's often a conflict. And this is a conflict where we have to bring in the strength, the Kali aspect of the mother. That strength, that force can help us purify our lower nature. So when we talk about the destruction can have two aspects to it. One is a destruction that causes damage. So, a force, an energy which is devoid of knowledge, say devoid of wisdom, that force is a destructive force that causes damage in the world. But the same destruction, the same force which is there to destroy but is accompanied by wisdom, it destroys all the impurities in you. It helps you become a better instrument. So, all the impurities of the lower nature that mother gives you or works through you, brings her force in you to destroy all the impurities in you so that you can become a fit instrument. So, that is the power, that is the strength which one feels in oneself. That is the strength where one then becomes aware of the possibilities and the potential they hold. They are not anymore confined to the form that okay, this is who I am, this is what my work is, this is what my family is, these are my roles. So like how I said, as basic as our introduction, we get stuck to the very small little personality we have on the outside. But slowly, like how the flower opens to the sun, we open to the love of the mother, we realize that we are so much more than what we think. And that is when the real yoga begins. That is when these powers start working through us. And we are then no more restricted to the form. We get in touch with our own essence, the divine essence within us. And that divine essence is that spark of that absolute divine who's working through us, who's hidden behind all the forms we have loaded us through all our life, through our education, through our childhood, through our adulthood, through our working. We are always so much involved and engaged in the transactional nature of the world that we often forget to pause, to reflect that what is the intention behind my action. We have become so action obsessed that we have forgotten to pause and see that what was the intention. And is there a linkage between my intention and action? Or have I become so conditioned to operate in a way that I'm almost mechanically operating? That, okay, give and take transaction. So the moment I pause and I decide that no, I want to become aware of, I want to ask the right questions. So the journey begins by asking the right questions so that the powers get a potential instrument to work through. So once I aspire, so like how mother says that sincerity, so sincere aspiration is the beginning that yes, I want to know. So posing the right question becomes the key. And once we pose the right question, we become more and more aware, become more and more conscious. So, what we are doing, we are choosing consciousness over conditioning. So, that becomes our own choice. That at every moment, I am conscious. I'm conscious of my alignment with the mother. I'm conscious of my alignment of my inner and my outer nature. I am no more stuck on just the outer personality. I'm also looking for, I'm also willing to, I'm also aspiring to look beyond. So I start making that journey from not getting restricted to the form, but moving towards exploring my essence. And once I look at the inner personality, when I look beyond the surface, I realize that I have the possibility or the potential of manifestation of all these powers through me. So, when we talk about an integral human being or an integral personality, that means that all the four powers of the mother, the wisdom aspect, the strength aspect, the harmony aspect, the perfection aspect, all lies in me. And when I reflect more, I'll see that somewhere or the other I am using all these powers. It's just that I am not realizing the potential I hold. I'm just working very mechanically, very on a give and take, on a very conditional basis. So the moment I pause, I realize that what are the possibilities. I become aware of my composition. It's basically like when you are given an instrument to use and you have been taught that okay, these are the three things which this instrument can do, you keep using that instrument, but somehow someday randomly you get to open that instrument, you get to see what is it made of, and with certain experiments you do is you, oh, it is more than those three things which were taught to me. So that is the revelation. That revelation can come to you through reading, that revelation can come through you listening, or in one silent moment of meditation, or one attending, say, right now listening to Guru Vandana. Every moment holds that potential for that revelation. It is how conscious we are to that mother's force. Every second is a possibility of potential transformation. The question is how open we are to that force, how open we are to choosing consciousness over conditioning, how vigilant we are to see that what is working where. And that is the journey which one makes. That is the role of yoga. That is the role of the practical aspect, the manifestation aspect. So, not just understanding it mentally that, oh, these are the possibilities, and yes, someday, or yeah, these things are working. So, what is the role of effort? So, when we talk about effort is required on the journey till the time our lower nature is active. We see that if you look around in the world, I started with talking about how there are certain aspects in the organization when we see that there are people in the board who have an idea, then there are visionaries, then there are executives, then there are managers, and there are actually people who are really working on the ground. The thing is that all of these things also happen in us. We have an idea element to us, we have a structure element to us, we have an execution element in us, we have the perfection element. The error which we human beings often make is that we don't see the interrelatedness or the interdependence. If you look at in the corporates also, you'll see when are the maximum problems arise, when there is miscommunication or no communication between these four aspects. So that happens in our own personality also, that when we are not aware of what is working when we are not, when the personality is not unified, when our mind, body, our emotions are not in talking terms, when they are not as one core unit but they are at different directions, then we have the problem. So the first thing becomes is that how we actually bring that harmony into the parts of the being. And when that harmony is established within, anything which you will execute will be the manifestation in a much better manner from where before you were. So even when you look around, we were talking about, say, perfection. That perfection comes in when there is harmony. Now, you see that these days we have so much of identification, say, with the physical existence, that we have become so health conscious. Yoga has taken a whole new meaning in the world. But if you look around, as yoga, what we understand by the very root is the union. We are looking at yoga, the physical, as a means to connect to the higher. But what we are doing, we are not connecting the dots. We are just looking at, oh, yoga, it means healthy. My body is healthy so that I can function well. But function well for what? Again, we are so action oriented that we forget to link it with the intention. Then I'm eating healthy. Why? So I'm always looking at the outside. I'm always looking at the structure. So I'm so immersed in the functionality that I'm not getting that space. I'm not willing to give myself that space to go to the composition. So one needs to answer that question, or for that matter, pose the right question that whatever I'm doing, what is the purpose? And link every tiny action to the intention that ultimately all what I'm doing is doing for the Divine Mother. I'm doing every aspect of my action day to day in her service, for her. That is the attitude with which, when we even do very small things, even for bettering our physical, that is when the things will start, say, flowing. So, if we, because we understand the integral principle that we start from where we are. So, if I'm rooted in the physical, if physical is something which I understand, if tangible is something which is easy for me to comprehend, so I start with perfecting what I have. So, I start perfecting my body, I start making my body healthy, but keeping the intention that this is for the greater purpose. Then, once I start bringing attention to details in my body, in the physical aspect of how I communicate with the world, how I interact with the world, how I be, with as small things as how do I keep my workplace? Is my workplace tidy? How is my room in which I live? How is my study? How are my books kept? Have I kept the glass properly or not? So just bringing your conscious awareness to small, small things, perfecting the physical. And once you start doing these things, once you start bringing that perfection element to your day to day activities, you will see that as a natural consequence, there's harmony in your mind body also. So it's not that it works from top bottom, it also works from bottom top because every process is a simultaneous process. So, what we're talking about transformation, we're talking about change, which is not a linear process. So once you start from the perfection, you will see that everything starts harmonizing around you, within you. And the more your body, mind, and your emotions are in connection, the more you will be able to channelize the energy that is coming. And once you start channeling the energy, you will start receiving more and more energy. So, first, the instrument which was so difficult for you when your mind was filled with confusion, it starts becoming as a receiving station. It starts receiving from the higher. So you receive and you execute. When you execute better, you receive well. That is the beauty of the powers and personalities of the mother, that they work in different multiple ways simultaneously. You have to recognize that what is your entry point, how do you relate to it, and then how do you bring it to your personality. And another element, once we understand this at the individual level, we take it to the collective level. We understand that integral yoga is a collective yoga, but one then again has to ask or pose oneself with the right question. That is it, it is a collective yoga, but what am I bringing to the collective? I am bringing myself. As an individual, I'm offering myself to the collective. But have I done my homework well? Have I done the preliminary steps well? So the more and more I become a better individual, the more and more I become a better instrument, what I offer to the collective automatically becomes better. So my contribution to the collective yoga is my individual sadhana, my individual association with all these powers and personalities. And then what I offer to the collective, that offering helps me as an individual to grow. Again, like I said, it is not a linear process that, okay, I will wait for that one day when I'm perfect as an individual, and then I will offer myself to the collective, because it all is a process. So again, the individual and the collective works at a simultaneous basis. So the more I work on my individual, I offer to the collective. Then when I offer to the collective, it helps me grow as an individual. So these two things run parallelly. So we just have to see that how am I connecting to these powers? What do they mean to me? When I'm receiving an idea, is my mind silent enough to receive? Am I making my mind an instrument to receive the higher power? Are my parts of the being in alignment to receive and channelize those things and bring it to the manifestation? So these are the right questions which we have to see. And that is where, how I was saying about the effort, the element of effort comes in. That effort to purify the lower nature, silencing the mind and opening the mind and the higher ranges to receive the grace. And when the effort from below and grace from above comes in, that is when the transformation of the being happens. And that is what our aspiration is. And we all know that till the time the lower nature is active, effort is required. But that personal effort is accompanied by the grace of the mother. And that is what brings the transformation. So, all we as individuals can do is continue making that effort to continue keeping our aspirations sincere and ask for that grace to come in. And that is where, when I started from saying that we just have to open our earthly nature to the living presence of the mother, that is what I would like to even end with saying that the starting in the beginning is to open ourselves to the living presence of the mother. And that is what
I think the connection is disrupted. Oh, I think you have to, yeah. So you have
Yeah,
to
I
tell it
think
one.
that
Yeah.
was just an indication for me that I should probably stop with the divine grace is telling me to pause now. So that is what even I wanted to end with, that it's personal effort and divine grace, the combination for a transformation, and that is what my aspiration is, and that is what my prayer for all of us is. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for this beautiful talk. I just thought of asking you one small thing. You talked about the configuration and the alignment between the background and the structure. How much is Shomarpan surrender required? I think that's the first most important thing for all our aspirants and us here.
See, the simplest answer is surrender is the beginning and end of all. But again, we understand it mentally, but actually, to experience surrender, there has to be total harmony in the parts of our being who don't resist, who don't revolt. So, to reach that level of conscious surrender, there's an element of effort required from our end and a constant, sincere aspiration. That is the combination one can have and just aspire every single day. That's what I have understood in my experience.
Thank you. Um, so I think after this talk, I think we will go with Jonathan and Shayna. Madam, please stay with us because we have Soumitro's talk and also a brief FAQ in the end. So is Jonathan and Shayna there? Hello?
I can see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes. Jonathan, that was a beautiful talk. And
Yeah.
we move more into now the background, which is Divine Mother's cosmic ways. And Soumitro has also joined. So everything is happening in time and beyond time as well.
Great. Well, thank you, Aditi. That was a beautiful, beautiful talk. Enjoy. Are you asking me to start right now? Or are we?
Yes.
Okay,
We can
perfect.
start. Yeah.
Great. Well, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Okay. That's the start. um, so my name's Jonathan Kay, and then my wife Shayna will be joining me in a second. And I'm very honored to be here today. Obviously a monumental day, but also just a fantastic collective of people coming together. And so a little bit about myself. I'm in Canada right now. I'm from Toronto, and I lived in Calcutta for 10 years learning Indian classical music with Shantanu Bhattacharya, who's a singer. I also learned the Esraj with Abir Singh Kangura in Shantiniketan. And so today I'm going to play a little bit of a raga, and then do a little bit of collaboration with Shayna, where we will be doing music and reciting Savitri. And I think I wanted to say a little bit before starting to play, which the title of the talk, or this presentation, The Divine Mother and Her Cosmic Ways. I sat for a long time kind of meditating on the fact that it's almost impossible to speak about something like this. And I rested in the fact that I feel that experientially music has been my path to engage and to experience and to try to open to the cosmic. I'm a jazz musician, and I learning jazz and starting to play jazz as a young, college student. I found that it opened me to certain kind of mystical experiences that I couldn't explain, and from that I became a lot more curious, and I started inquiring into spirituality, which was not part of my upbringing. And I ended up in India. I got interested in Indian music and found a lot of people pursuing similar questions, but also a lot of traditional knowledge about what music can do and the place of music in spirituality. And it so happens that Shantanu Bhattacharya grew up as an integral yoga sadhak. And although I was going to him to learn North Indian classical music, there was the presence of Sri Aurobindo and the mother always there. We would sit in front of the altar every time to do our sadhana, and I learned the meaning of what a guru is and what sadhana is, and it was all through music. My Guruji, we would read, especially on darshan days. We'd get together, like on a day like this, we'd raise the mother's flag on his roof in Calcutta, and we would sing and play music together and eat payash, especially payash, and all of these things are so important to how I was engaging in the sadhana that was taught to me. And so I just wanted to speak a little bit before I started playing the raga. I wanted to continue on what Aditi was talking about. And after I got a little bit of inspiration as to what I wanted to say, and I saw that Aditi, you'd be speaking about the four aspects of the mother, that's exactly where I felt like I needed to start this, because I think that is just one framework that we were gifted by Sri Aurobindo and the mother to try to engage with archetypal cosmic ways. And so I will not expand at all on the four aspects of the mother. But the question that I wanted to again ask, and Aditi, you've said so much that resonated so strongly with me. It's not about knowing this, it's about practicing it. It's about experience. And so the lens of this talk is going to be a little bit about how I, in my sadhana, have approached this through raga music, specifically raga music. Music in general, but I'll use Indian raga music as a specific lens here for a reason I'll talk about in a second. But I think that question of how do we know the four aspects? How can we open ourselves? How can we surrender to them? And how can we build structures of becoming that can facilitate that? And I think this idea of a structure of becoming, to me, that's what music has been. It's been the structure in which I feel that I have been able to practice sadhana, to experiment, to do the kind of the subjective science of yoga. And that structure for me has been through music. Approaching cosmic questions, there's a couple of things I wanted to note in terms of how I approach that. I really am inspired by the praxis of the Upanishads, and just the simple definition or the meaning of that is to sit near. And as I was, I'm a PhD student at California Institute of Integral Study, and I took a class on the Upanishads with Debashish Banerjee, my mentor. And that idea of sitting near has been really, really important to me. Because it means that you're not, it's a liminal space of oneness and two-ness. And so it can help us understand some kind of an integral idea of being and becoming. To merge completely in oneness is to lose individuality of the self, which is one yogic movement, of course. But that idea of being in between, a liminal space that is both two and one, I think is quite interesting, and it definitely accounts for the fact that you can cultivate individuality and know yourself as separate, but also know yourself as one. And I think that what that helps to do is it maintains the mystery. It maintains what I would say is a mystagogy. It maintains that idea of that we can't completely represent that with, let's say, rational thought. There's going to be something that is always escaping it, and that's where experience as a framework of knowing is really the way to engage in this. So maintaining that mystery, sitting close to, are themes that I wanted to bring out here. And so in terms of raga music, and I wanted to just share the idea that music itself is, I think it's a very suitable way of being involved in a mysterious process. It's something that we can't contain in an image of thought. It's something that is in duration. It's constantly opening and dissipating at the same time. It exists in temporality. And so the idea of representing an aspect of the mother, for instance, would be to in some ways, to metaphysically or philosophically take it out of time and becoming. And that's what I think music preserves, the experience of music, the music consciousness. Just one second here. So sorry about that. So that's why I think that music is also a very helpful way of for me anyway, to retain and to start to develop ways of knowing ourselves and consciousness in duration, without that the risk of taking it out. And that's what representation does. That's what the law of the excluded middle, the law of the mind, is going to do. It's going to inframe something and spatialize time. So the next part of why I think raga music, for instance, is very suitable for it's been suitable for me to understand and to experiment with this idea of being in time, is that it gives us a structure. And specifically, I've been exploring the idea that a raga is no different than a yantra in time. A yantra is that eternal image, and you meditate on the bindu, the Aditi, right? And so I'm going to now try to draw. This is why I wanted to speak about the four aspects of the mother, because we have the four aspects, and then we have the Aditi in the middle, or the bindu of the yantra. And that bindu point, that it's a vanishing point. It's an infinite, unbound infinity, vanishing point. Is, for me, that's the point of integration. That's the point when you are sitting near, or you're sitting in, you are becoming infinity, but the aspects are still present. They are still part of that two-ness and oneness. And so in terms of a raga, like a yantra, a raga also has a bindu, an Aditi point. If we're going to talk about the four aspects, that word Aditi is very important. And that's why it's a beautiful name. But so that is sa. So in raga music, we have a sa. It's constantly taking us to that infinite point. It's will never merge 100% with it, because it's always this a perspectival vanishing point, let's say. And where are we here? Just tracking some ideas here. Okay, so we have this yantra, the 4 aspects of the mother, likened to a raga, for instance. What's the dynamics of a yantra in motion? And so a raga presents us a similar schema. Another way to think about it that I've been exploring is that we do have there is a structure. There's a surface structure to a raga. There's an entry point into saying, well, how do I understand this? How do I engage in understanding what a raga is? And there's ways in which there's handles that we can grab. It's a collection of phrases, for instance. Ethnomusic or musicologists from the turn of the last century would describe it as a mode or a scale. That's a Western perspective, and it doesn't really work, actually, but it's more a collection of phrases, for instance. But how those phrases work and how they actually take on life of their own is part of, I think, that kind of liminal oneness and two-ness. The raga, but the raga is a consciousness in itself. It has its own way of working. It can be considered to be an interface with beyond the human register, for instance. And so I think that it's a helpful way to think about, let's say, that genesis of a structure, of a superstructure, of like not a superstructure, of a surface mentality, or the outer being, things that you can grasp onto and understand. But how do we understand that movement into the inner being, for instance? There's structures, but they are not structurally, they're not in the same kind of structure. It's a structure of becoming. It's a structure that works differently. And I think that, again, thinking about moving on to the inner being, when time, you could say, is of a different nature as well, then how do we track these structures and know what's communicating between the inner and outer being? Now, to take this to a cosmic level, what I've learned is that raga music is a ritual. It's a ritual that helps organize space and time, elements, sacred elements, instruments. You organize space according to sitting with other musicians and other sadhaks of music in the room or in the hall. And this ritual is there to help open to the cosmic. And so the last thing I wanted to talk about a little bit was, again, trying to listen to the raga. And what I'm going to ask is that I'll play a raga, and let's sit in contemplation on some of these ideas in terms of a raga being that ritual, being an organization of space-time that opens to the outside, that opens to the divine, that opens to an aspect of the mother. And in The Secret of the Vedas, I was studying this, and there was a very interesting word that Sri Aurobindo brings out. It's called Divas Pade. And he, in that Secret of the Vedas, was talking about this architectonic organization that is a ritual that comes from the Vedic times. Here's a quote from that book. The cosmic powers act and exist. Humankind takes them upon himself, makes an image of them in his own consciousness, and endows that image with the life and power that the Supreme Being has breathed into his own divine forms and world energies. And so there's one more quote I wanted to read, which is just going to develop a little bit more this idea of arrangement, of what I'm calling architectonic. The sacrifice, so this is the Vedic sacrifice, is essentially an arrangement, a distribution of the human activities and enjoyments among the different cosmic powers. So thinking now of the 4 aspects of the mother, for instance, it is the problem of the right arrangement and distribution of his works that presents itself to the sacrificer, where the sacrifice must always be according to the law and the divine ordainment. And I think that these 2 short quotes I think are ways that allowed me to really understand that to me is what a raga ritual is. And I've developed that idea as a sonal ritual. It's a sound, it's a sonic ritual. And that arrangement, that idea that, and there is a law, a divine law, and how do we open to that? How do we kind of perceive the genesis of the structures that we are participating in, that we are becoming in, but how do we perceive them actually opening to greater than what we are, the cosmic, really, the cosmic being? And I think that that's all I really wanted to say, to preface just playing a little bit of this raga music, because I'm involved in thinking a lot about what a raga is. And I'll never forget when my guru Shantanu ji told me that when the mother would improvise music on the organ, that she would actually see the raga deities, the consciousnesses, they would come. Her music would actually bring them. And that was a huge inspiration to really say, well, that this actually is, you can experience a consciousness, an archetypal musical embodied being, a consciousness that you can sit in liminal closeness to. You can merge with it. You can become one. You can sit in a liminal closeness to as in two-ness and separateness. And I think that all of that is all part of this ritual of raga music. So that's how I wanted to address a little bit of the ideas that I'm how I'm framing raga music as a yantra, as a ritual. So let's maybe get to the playing. Let's see here. Can you section the computer? Okay, so this is an Esraj. It's called a Boro Esraj. It was designed by Ranadhir Roy, Pandit Ranadhir Roy, who was from Shantiniketan, and he took a smaller traditional form of this instrument and designed it to be much bigger, to have a gourd on the top here, have an open hollow back, and he designed it to actually be suitable to play raga music, North Indian classical music, and I'd recommend you listen to his music because it's extremely special. And I've learned this instrument from Abir Singh Kangura, who's in Shantiniketan. And I'm going to play a raga as an offering. This is a raga called Parameshwari, which I thought was suitable. To me, as a consciousness, this is a very suitable raga for an occasion like today. But bear in mind that in the Indian classical tradition, this would be a morning raga. It was brought from the south by Ravi Shankar. So it's not a very old raga, for instance. But in the spirit of offering, it is close to morning here. It's morning here. But I think that just if we enter into this, the spirit, the consciousness of this raga, I think that it's suitable for this type of an occasion, no matter what time. And the last thing I guess I just wanted to say is that this raga, so the sa being the bindu point of the yantra, which is being played here by the tanpura, an electric version of it. There's 6 different notes in this, 5 outside of the sa. And maybe it would be one way to practice hearing of music is to visualize how it comes to you in terms of geometrical and architectonic type of design. And so if we think of a yantra, or if you have a yantra arise in you, you can see that there's going to be 6 points here, one in the center, 5 points that are going to be all in relationships. And how do they move? How are they fluidly changing? What are the stronger parts of the design, for instance? What are the parts that are not part of the fundamental core structure? What are parts that I linger on for a long period of time? These are some of the questions that could maybe help this contemplation and make that bridge into seeing a yantra in duration. I think we should just. Okay, actually, I'll ask them. I might not be too. Just a quick question, Joy.
Yes.
How much time? We have another couple minutes. We can do this reading.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, I'll just stick in this route. Okay, so you can please, Shayna, you can announce.
Hello, namaskar. My name is Shayna K, and I am also from Toronto, Canada, and I'm pleased to be here and to see Mona Lisa and Joy, and I'm not sure who else is out there that I know, but it's fabulous to be with you all again. So I'm just going to do the reading from Savitri, the beginning of Canto 2, the Adoration of the Divine Mother. A stillness absolute, incommunicable, meets the sheer self-discovery of the soul. A wall of stillness shuts it from the world. A gulf of stillness swallows up the sense and makes unreal all that mind has known. All that the laboring senses still would weave, prolonging an imaged unreality. Self's vast spiritual silence occupies space. Only the inconceivable is left. Only the nameless without space and time. Abolished is the burdening need of life. Thought fails from us. We cease from joy and grief. The ego is dead. We are freed from being and care. We have done with birth and death and work and fate. O soul, it is too early to rejoice. Thou hast reached the boundless silence of the self. Thou hast leapt into the glad divine abyss. But where hast thou thrown self's mission and self's power? On what dead bank on the eternal's road? One was within thee, done for his purpose in the stars. Escape beings, not the victory and the crown. Something thou comest to do from the unknown. But nothing is finished, and the world goes on. because only half God's cosmic work is done. Only the everlasting no has neared and stared into the eyes and killed the heart. But where is the lover's everlasting yes and immortality in the secret heart? The voice that chants to the creator fire, the symboled Om, the great ascending word. The bridge between the rapture and the calm, the passion and the beauty of the bride. The chamber where the glorious enemies kiss. The smile that saves the golden peak of things. This too is truth and the mystic heart of life.
Okay, thank you so much for organizing this and for everybody for being here together and for this musical, for contemplating this music with us.
It's taking a while for me to speak because after this kind of rendition, you need to have a pause because the luminous heart of the unknown is she. That was a beautiful presentation, Jonathan and Shayna. Thank you very much. I think the passage she read out, the extract from Savitri, was very apt, and you could understand that when I was conceiving this entire program, I was thinking most of the programs I just generally try to think it in terms of a concert. So as you can see that it was written Surya Savitri set 1. So there will be different sets, and in future this year, um, I would want this entire team with Madam also, and Shayna and yourself and Soumitro as well to be, because this is a very important year, the 150th birth anniversary year of Sri Aurobindo. So we will come up with set 2, and this was a very beautiful rendition. And very quick point. While you were talking about that it's morning time in Canada and you played the raga, and it's almost evening moving into night here in Kolkata and in India. So I've always
Mhm.
felt that staying in Kolkata, you could probably have seen and experienced that when it's very hot and then suddenly the cloud becomes dark and it starts pouring down, thundering. So it's almost as if the rainy season, the monsoon was concealed in that paltry summer. Uh, right now, the thoughts which is coming from the mother is that all the structures which we talk about, there is so much of an interlocking between one structure and another structure that almost another structure which is going to come in the future is almost concealed in the present structure we're going through. So it's almost in time and beyond time as well. And that's why we come to certain ideas like the torus, which is a kind of a flow form, and it there is this primordial consciousness from where this flow form originates. It's almost taking its change, and it's changing continuously at every point of time. We can't even predict what is coming next, and that's probably what Prem would call the adventure of consciousness. So those who are in this path of consciousness, we have to be long distance runner. Thank you, Shayna and Jonathan. Thank you. And Shomitra is with us, and he's been to ashram, I think, twice today. To great. Thank you, Basu, who has been with us like a mentor. And I would now introduce Shomitra.
Okay, thank you. Am I audible?
Yes,
Okay.
you're audible. Yes, you're
Yes, yes,
audible.
yes. And great thanks to Joy for organizing this event, and also to the others who have joined. Joy's team is there, the regular team, and then I was very happy that Aditi from Auro University to join, and Jonathan, whom the first time I'm seeing, but I've heard a lot about him. I've heard about you for a long time, and so very good. And Devashish is my very close friend, and so together with others also at the institute where you are now there, with Brand Cartwright and others, and also there I'm very happy also to have Manan also, who is a very close associate of mine in all programs and all, and he gives me a sense of security when he's there. And so all that I will not take much of your time because the last speaker should be short. Uh, and I would just like to tell, and mainly for here, there is an most of us here are some of us are known to the mother Sri Aurobindo circle, but there are others who respect the mother, but they are not so much conversant with Sri Aurobindo's works. So I would just like to tell a little bit about Why Sri Aurobindo? Why Sri Aurobindo, and where the mother comes in? You see, to tell this, I have to tell about a Chaldean legend which the mother was very fond of, is more ancient than the Egyptian tradition. And that legend was, it's just a legend, but it is a psychological truth. It has a great psychological truth. And the legend was that when the creation was commissioned, then certain things, when it was decided that the creation should happen, then certain things were thrown. Certain things were thrown into the manifestation and said that you develop yourselves, develop your infinite potentialities, like light, like love, like joy. So all these positive things, light, love, joy, consciousness, knowledge, all they were thrown. And they were told to develop themselves infinitely. And they were developing themselves. But in the process of development, because they were given an infinite variation to be developed, so they also at one point developed their opposites. Like that, because as I'm basically a doctor, so I can be also a very bad doctor exploiting my patients, just like that. One can be. Of course, musicians don't exploit. So Jonathan smiles, but doctors can exploit. So it's just like that, that love became hatred, and joy became sorrow, and knowledge became ignorance, and light became darkness, consciousness became the inconscience. Everything turned into their opposites. So there was a great chaos, a great chaos. What to be done? What to be done? And then to correct it, a second group of forces were sent. This second group of forces are what we call as the gods, or the fairies, angels, and other things in different cultures. They were the second group they were thrown. Now this is very interesting, which means that the Asura, the Satan, was there even before the gods came. They're older than the gods. You see, the gods were the second corrective forces that were sent because everything went into chaos. That's why the Savitri begins with the line, it was the hour before the gods away. If you see, very interesting. You see, Savitri's most difficult canto is the first canto. And the most difficult of the first canto is the first page. Very, very difficult. So there are hundreds of interpretations of it. But I will give you one angle where you can understand this. And if you see, and it is also related to what Mother and Aurobindo wants to say, a very basic thing. You see that when a creation is dissolved, which is called a prolaya. No, there's a prolaya. Prolaya happens when the creation is dissolved. Then everything, where does it go? As for example, for us as our individual human beings, or even if we are not there, what we have conceived, we have thought, they sink into our unconscious, and from the unconscious they sink to the terrestrial inconscious. So they remain in the terrestrial inconscious. So there is a terrestrial inconscious. So from the subconscious to the unconscious, and from the unconscious things go to the terrestrial inconscious. Very important to understand, because in Sri Aurobindo uh, sees things from the cosmic phenomenon, not as an individual phenomenon. When you go to the inconscious, you are no longer an individual. You are linked with the terrestrial inconscious. So everything merges there. So like that, when a creation is dissolved, when a prolaya happens, then all that had happened, all that was there, all that had happened during that creative cycle, that sinks into the inconscious of the cosmos. So the cosmic inconscious, everything is sunk. And from there again, something will start up, something will come up. So something will come up, so that you remember. So everything that has been done, everything that has been conceived, everything that has been planned, sinks into the inconscious of the cosmos. And when a new creative cycle starts again, it will start from the memory traces left there. So you see, it doesn't start from a vacuum. Nothing starts from a vacuum. Nothing starts from zero. So everything has sunk down, down, down into the unconscious. And from there, everything again about a new cycle, something will come up. In fact, many things that we have might have come from our previous cycles, not from this cycle. For example, might be the figure of Ganesha, which is so flexible. Throughout your life, every day you can make a new Ganesha. There is no form in the world which can be broken and created again and again. There might be ragas, na? Something which people like Jonathan indulge in. They might have been coming from some cycle previous to us, which is also interesting in another way, because only Sri Aurobindo says that the individual soul doesn't dissolve into the great void. It doesn't dissolve into the super soul. It is only Sri Aurobindo who says that, and the mother says it is very difficult to understand this, because for Sri Aurobindo the divine is both individual, transcendent, and universal. So they are equally important. And the individual soul for everybody, at the end, it dissolves into the great void or the absolute or need or whatever you call. But only Sri Aurobindo says it doesn't. It doesn't. The individuality remains. It joins. No? It joins. It joins. No? Like what do you call, Mukesh Ambani joined his father to make a new company. He didn't get lost. He didn't go get lost when his father died. It's like just like that. So you see, they joined. So that means, because I told you that everything sinks into the inconscious and the individual always remains. So nothing that we are doing in this world, in this cycle, is going to be wasted. Everything will be preserved. Everything will remain. Even today's event that we are doing, what Joy has organized, this will also remain. When our cycle of creation will not be there, that will also remain as memory traces in the cosmic inconscious to stimulate or to be what you call templates of the future cycles to come. This is an impression you can get if you see in depths in the first page. Coming back to what we are talking about, this, you see that we were talking about that the gods, what the second group of forces which were sent to the world for the creation, because the first group they mismanaged the thing. And then what happened? There has been a constant tussle between the anti-divine and the divine forces. And about these anti-divine forces, all cultures of the world, they agree. Everybody agrees that they are the darker forces. So what we classify in a different way, Mephistopheles, Satan, Lucifer, like that. We have classified the same thing as Oshura, Rakshasa, Pisacha, different levels of consciousness. We classify, but we are all agreed in religion about the positive things. We all differ, but about the negative things, all over the world, we have got a commonality. Only one thing, only there is one difference with the negative things for the rest of the world. One is that in the Semitic tradition, this devil and the Satan, they are considered to be parallel to God. In our tradition, we believe that they have come out of the supreme and they will go back to the supreme. They have come out of the supreme, and when the task is finished, they will go back to the supreme, because light doesn't depend upon the shadow depends upon the light. That is the principle we follow in the Indian parampara, that light doesn't depend upon the shadow depends upon the light. So then what has happened is that this divine and the anti-divine forces are constantly fighting. And afterwards, if you have gone deep enough, then you will know that prior to evolution there was a non-evolutionary worlds. Then these non-evolutionary worlds contain these planes where the Osuras, Devatas, they were prior to the evolution. That Sri Aurobindo, of course, has put them in a very great map of consciousness, which nobody has done before him. He has done it in a way where everything is getting clarified. But the main thing is that this clash between the divine and the anti-divine forces leaves us human beings at crossroads. We are at crossroads. Huh? Sometimes we hear, for example, those who are in India, we know that in sometimes when there is a people have died in Kashmir in due to firing. We say that they have died because of the crossfiring between the militants and the military. So something like that comes out. So like that, we are also in our life, we are caught in the crossfiring between the divine and the anti-divine forces, and many of our sufferings are because of that. You see, all the sufferings that I have in my life, all of them are not related to me. All of them cannot be related, explained by psychology of the individual alone. Up to certain point, some things, there are certain things which I am responsible, or which has come from my psychological matrix. But there are a great number of things which have come from the tussle between the divine and the anti-divine forces, and unfortunately, I have succumbed to them because I was in the wrong path. which we don't understand. Psychology is incomplete without understanding the metaphysical thing. All blames of life we cannot put on our myself. You see, it's like that. That if you know how to drive a car nicely, it doesn't mean you will not have an accident. The car on the opposite side might have a drunk driver, and even if you are driving correctly, you might be hit. It's like that. These things happen in life. So there is no way practically to get out in this world out of the tussle between the anti-divine and the divine forces. So what was the solution? What was the solution? So a number of religions, especially the Semitic religions, so they said that there is no solution available in the world. If you do are morally very good, you will go to heaven. If you do good work, then you will go to heaven. So this was there. This is their what you call main fort, that you have to go to heaven. You have to follow moral principles or ethical principles. You can also buy a, as people now buy a land in the moon. No, they can also buy some piece of land in the heaven. Sometimes they believe. Sometimes they also sell. No, there are some some evangelists who sell also land in heaven to people here. But in our country, we will say Shankaracharya, when he said, because Shankaracharya and Buddha had deviated from the line of evolution for some specific purpose. But Shankaracharya had said that Jagat Mithya, Brahma Sattva, because this world, now, which is full of these negative forces, you can't do anything. So the only truth is the great absolute, is the only truth. So what was so this Shankaracharya said that, world is false. What Shankaracharya says, that is all right. What the absolute, that is also false. There is nothing that is true. What is true? The truth is a great zero. So what is the solution? Both for Shankaracharya and for Buddha, the solution was, I will not be born again in this world. Let me not be born again. So those of you who are young, for them I will tell you that when I was young, say 50 years back, elderly people, because there was no television at that time in India, and they were sitting down lonely in the home, no, nobody at home sitting, and I used to ask them, Uncle Ji, what are you thinking? No, next life, no, I should not be born. This should be my last life. So many times I've heard this. So now this elderly generation don't tell that because they watch soap opera, TV serials, no? They watch. So that's why they don't tell that. But at that time they used to tell. 50 years back, it was a very common thing. Everywhere they used to say, we don't want to be born again. Now, only Sri Aurobindo, you see, the world had to wait for Sri Aurobindo. And only Sri Aurobindo, he promised that the world is as it is. You can have something different here. You can have, but you see, the heaven can also be replicated in earth. But you see, he is not undermining the other achievements. He is not undermining the spiritual achievements. He said that, of course, you can get liberated from this earth, from this misery, from this falsehood, into the great void, into the, what do you call, into the Sunnah or into the Nirvana, everything. That is, oh, okay, fine. But there is another option available. Another option available. And that option is, you have to go, you have to traverse a different path. A path of transformation, not liberation. That was the path of liberation, and there is a path of transformation. And the path of how you can do this transformation. Then Sri Aurobindo said, you see that we are always concentrating on the creator Brahma and the destroyer Shiva. We are not giving that much importance to Vishnu, the preserver. So we have to make Vishnu's work very important. We have to prolong Vishnu's work. So how to prolong? Well, he was not thinking in individual terms. He was thinking in terms of the human species. You see, Sri Aurobindo's approach to all the problems are from a cosmic angle. And then afterwards, you come to the individual. You have to understand this, not from the individual to the cosmic. He has a cosmic vision. And from there, you are coming to the individual. So he talks about the species, that this species has to be preserved. This human species that has come, this should not go away. This has to be preserved. He's not thinking about individual persons living and dying. He's not concerned about that at first. Afterwards, that immortality will come in a different way, which is a very difficult thing, which you have to know much afterwards when you have known Sri Aurobindo's things very properly. But the sum and substance was that he was wanting that the species has to persist, and the species cannot persist in the same way. So it has to undergo evolutionary, what you call, modification. So it has to evolve as it has evolved from the animal, from the birds, from the plants. It has evolved to the human being. This evolution cannot stop. It has to proceed. Only so long evolution happened automatically, but now we have to participate. It has to be a conscious evolution. It has to be a collaborative evolution. Remember, he is not undermining, he is not cancelling the biological evolution. That's all right. That's he accepts the biological evolution. But he is only saying that pari passu with the biological evolution, there is an evolution of consciousness that is going on. And that evolution of consciousness can bring forth new forms. Then he was asked, then why we are not seeing new type of species coming out? Like you see, we had tigers and lions and everything were coming out of human beings. Now we say like cyborgs and all. Why they are not coming out? Then Shobhi said, just now, evolutionary powers, what you call the evolutionary process, is concerned with developing more powers of consciousness rather than new beings like that. What you are seeing. So this present human being, the gaze that we have attained through civilization, we are not going to lose that. Keeping it as a template, we have to grow into something more, something which will be a greater being, something will be a supramental being, something which will be much greater, much greater. So, and then he charted out, not only he conceived of that, he charted out a program how to go there. And in that program, there were important landmarks, which these landmarks were given by the mother. You see, the mother comes in, and you see, the mother is an embodiment. She is not an ordinary individual. She is actually a fairy tale. She's actually, her life is a fairy tale. And if you see, when we call Satchidananda, then Sri Aurobindo modified Satchidananda as Sat Chit Shakti Ananda, because Chit, consciousness, is inactive without the force. So consciousness has to be active with the Shakti inherent in it. So, and you see, the reality you can conceive as Satchidananda, which is something like abstract, but you can also consider it as a being. And when you consider it as a being, then Chit Shakti, it builds the worlds. Sat, Chit Shakti Ananda. What is Sat? Sat is present as the essence of everything in the universe. In that poise, it is known as a self. The Sat is present as an essence of everything in the universe. In that poise, it is known as a self. And Chit Shakti, it means the planes of consciousness, the ascending and descending worlds, the evolutionary and non-evolutionary worlds, all are made by the Chit Shakti. And Ananda is the value aspect. No? Because of Ananda, everything goes on. As you said, Joy said, adventure of consciousness. It actually, the phrase is in Savitri, which I learned from in clinical work, which is why it is so important that the whole phrase, adventure of consciousness and joy. In Savitri, the line is adventure of consciousness and joy. And so very interesting. And how I knew how I came to stumble upon the importance of that. But leaving aside that, now this mother is the embodiment of this Chit Shakti. So she is something, she is carrying a power which can change things, which can change things. It is not an easy thing. It is not an easy thing to be an embodiment of Chit Shakti. So because she can change things, and to change things, she has to need, of course, a base, a fulcrum on which to act. And she also has provided the fulcrum. What is the fulcrum that she has provided? She has provided our what we call a projection of the Jivatma in us, which is called the psychic being. In fact, if you see, this is how she has countered our our safety passage from the conflict between the divine and the anti-divine forces. You see, otherwise we will succumb and we will go, we'll say bye bye, we are for liberation of the world. We are not concerned with the world at all. But Mother wanted that we should be in the world. She wanted we should be in the world. And for that, they've given us a safety valve. And that safety valve is the psychic being, which is a projection of the Jivatma, which is a very important thing. You see, there is something, there's a fulcrum. And because it is afterwards, it will be the template of the new creation, which is a very difficult thing. I don't want to make things complicated by bringing everything here. But that psychic being, together with the divine grace, which is always there, together they can be the saviors. They can be the saviors out of this fight between the divine and the anti-divine forces. You see, very interesting. Mother once told Durga, you see, before Durga Puja, every year before Durga Puja, some days before, Durga used to come to the mother. And mother used to, you see, every time, this is much celebrated in Bengal, it is very important thing, that Durga comes in what vehicle and goes in what vehicle. So that vehicle means she might come in an elephant and go in a boat, like that. It is like that. Every year, astrological prediction tells what is how she comes and how she goes, and based on that we know whether there is anarchy or whether there will be a lot of paddy or there will be a lot of what you call flood or other things. So every year when Durga, before Durga Puja, when Durga is to come, mother is to correct them, and then because Durga had to fight with the Asura, with the Asuric, with the Rakshasa, with the Asura, she had to fight with the Mohisasu, with the Asura, she had to fight. So mother was told that you change your strategy, make a strategy such that they will come and surrender. Because throughout, if you go on fighting and fighting and fighting, then we'll go on with that. There will be no transformation. We want to transform the Asuras, so let them come and surrender. See, it was very surprising. Within a few, I think, very shortly, within a few years, there is a very important, in Durga Puja, we have many important pujas in Calcutta. And one of the important pujas in Muhammad Ali Park, the Asura, instead of fighting, was presenting Durga with a huge bunch of roses. You see, long after that, I made this artist has passed away. But long after that, when I met his son, I explained to him that when the mother gave that idea, your father, being a very sensitive artist, picked up that idea, and that is why you see it happened after mother told that. And you see, this is transformation. This is transformation. Even the Asuras are going to get transformed, and they are also going to help in the great world. Now, our time is short. I will just give you one or two small hints of a very beautiful thing, which I think is very relevant at this time. What will happen towards transformation? Can we go towards transformation? Now, while we are going towards transformation, you see what happens in liberation. In liberation, we leave the mind and go to the Brahman. This mind is full of complexities, full of all sorts of negative things, full of all sorts of intellectual, what do you call, theories and everything. Leave aside, and like a galloping train, we go to the great void or the Brahma or Nirvana, whatever you say. Now, Sri Aurobindo, for the first time, he said, there is another road. The cognitive consciousness can itself be born. There can be an evolution of the cognitive consciousness. Very important, very new thing. There will be different levels of mind that will be appearing. There will be the higher mind, there will be the illumined mind, there will be intuition, there will be overmind, which is a field of global cognition. And then there is a field of integral cognition, which is the supermind. And the creative consciousness, the supreme creative consciousness that will start working directly there. That is also again Sri Aurobindo's one of the greatest contributions to the world of thought. Throughout India, throughout tradition, for thousands of years, we have always said that one became many. One became many. But how one becomes many, nobody knows. Nobody has ever explained that. Even Swami Vivekananda had once said that they use the word Maya to explain how one became many, but Maya is a descriptive term, not an explanatory term. And if anybody explains that, then it will be a great thing, because for 3,000 years nobody has explained. This is Swami Vivekananda's own words that nobody has explained. Only Sri Aurobindo has explained. How he brought in the concept of a creative consciousness, which is programming, which is programming the Sachidananda, or the creation is programmed. Supermind, or what you call the supermind, is a level which is just below the absolute and which is programming the absolute so that the manifestation can happen. So first it will be program space and time. First thing that it will program space and time so that the matrix will be made on where the manifestation can occur. Then it will be programming what we call divine archetypes. One of these divine archetypes are the Jivatmas. As why Sri Aurobindo said, you see, Nirodha once said that he was very shy, he was a bit proud. He had a dream that he had come from Shiva. And then Sri Aurobindo said, everybody's Jivatma has come from some God. It's not only yours, everybody's Jivatma, because it has come from the greatest divine archetype there in the overmind. So it is a very interesting thing. And you see, that consciousness can be activated. Now, how can we go toward that? Can we go towards that? We can start now going to that. Now, time is right to go towards that. That is what I wanted to say. And I will end with this, talk with that. The time has now come to start that journey. Why that time has come now? People will tell me that Sri Aurobindo's words, nobody is very difficult, nobody understands, or we don't have so many people coming to Sri Aurobindo. We have lakhs and lakhs of people going to all other gurus. All the other gurus in India, they will have many, many devotees. thousands and lakhs of devotees. Manan can tell, na, statistics, Manan, you can tell how many devotees go to everybody. You are the smallest community. But I always tell them that Sri Aurobindo's works were, he had written this 100 years back. And it has taken 100 years for the global mind to prepare itself to understand Sri Aurobindo's works. You see, those works Sri Aurobindo had written 100 years back have sunk into the consciousness of the earth and was waiting there until the global mind shifted from linear to non-linear thinking. You see, there were exceptional individuals who are understanding Sri Aurobindo, but at a mass level, until the global mind has a shift, it is only now that the global mind is shifting. That there is a now thinking, there is a circular way of thinking is coming up. Very important, because for the last, say, more than 2000 years, the world was fed with the ideas of three great individuals, what we call Plato, Confucius, and Buddha. So all the main things, the last 2000 years that have been circulating in the world, they have the root seeds in these great minds. That trajectory is coming to an end now with Buddha, Socrates, Confucius, are more or less temporary in the annals of consciousness. And that field, that trajectory is ending now, and a new trajectory is going to start. And that is Sri Aurobindo's thought of multiple thinking. And he has said that on everything I have thought simultaneously along multiple lines, and it was strenuous. And I am obliged to impose that strain on my readers. He has said that. I am obliged to impose that strain on my readers. So you have to prepare yourself to understand Sri Aurobindo. You have to sit, you have to meditate. As Nirodha used to say, you sit and pray to the gods so that you can understand a little by little what he has said. And it is now this you are saying that the mind is getting free. One example, I say, how do you understand the mind is getting free? I will tell the most common example. 30 years back in India, everybody would have laughed if you were reading Harry Potter. They would say you are reading all nonsense things. Now nobody minds, everybody is happy because the mind is wanting to take truth from all sides. You see, the youth mind today, no political party in India can have a control over the youth mind. They are totally free. They can't be captured by any political, what do you call, at least for some time they might get swayed, but any dogmatic idea is now very difficult to be imposed on the youth population all over the world. All over the world, you see that people are now changing disciplines. You see, I can start as a doctor and I can become a chartered accountant. All these rigid things are breaking. These are the first steps. These are the first steps. These are showing, as Mother said, that truth is not linear but global, not successive but simultaneous. Hence, it cannot be expressed in words, it has to be lived. A very important statement. I will repeat again. Truth is not linear but global, not successive but simultaneous. Hence, it cannot be expressed in words. It has to be lived. So truth has to be lived. And this truth is very complex. You see, truth is very complex. Actually, you cannot oversimplify things. In televisions and all, when they talk about analyze all problems, no, the very oversimplified way they analyze things. But actually, truth is a very, very complex thing. When Tagore was coming to meet Sri Aurobindo, when he came and he wrote a piece on that. What transpired between them was not exposed, but he wrote what he was thinking when he was coming from the court to the ashram to meet Sri Aurobindo, and he was thinking this, that truth is very complicated, and Sri Aurobindo has not unnecessarily oversimplified it, and that is why I respect him. And see that we have to understand that. Now, what I wanted to say now, and before finishing, that the first step above the mind is the higher mind, and the time has now got ready. We are getting ready for the higher mind. When people talk about this national education that is being developed, I say that all things okay, but one central thing, if we can give an importance to it, how the higher mind can be developed. What is the higher mind? I will give you an example. When I take a counseling class, the first day I tell the students, they are all master's degree, MSc, what do you call, MA in social, MA in counseling they do. So I tell them, in this class, irrespective of caste, class, religion, color of your skin, or language, are you all the same? And you see 23-year-old students, na? 21-year-old students at that time, they will say, yes, you are all, because they are charged, na? At that age, you are very charged. They will say, yes, yes, we are the same. Then I tell them that there is a level of consciousness where all ideas have the same value. The ideas opposite to your idea has the same value. And see, that's Aurobindo had once said, I know that the opposite of what I say is true. I know that the opposite of what I say is true. Who but Aurobindo will have the guts to say this? That I know the opposite of what I say is true. But of course, he was a bit naughty also, so he added, but at the moment, what I say is true. Means not to make confused, no? Not to make things confused or keep things open-ended. So he added that also. But what I'm saying is that in our education, we have to train our students to think with contradictory and complementary ideas, to understand that the opposite idea is also has the same value as my idea. I tell counseling students now that you will never be a good counselor unless you understand that the opposite value, opposite idea expressed by your client, which doesn't match with your idea, is equally true. Equally true. There is an equal right to exist. All opposite ideas have equal right to exist. Then people say, is it possible? How can we do that in the education? I said, why it is not possible? If you can teach a student to play chess with oneself, you see, we teach students to play chess with oneself. So when you are organizing debate competitions in the school, in the class, in the college, why not you come up with one individual telling both for the motion and for against the motion? You can train a person to think with contradictory ideas, with both contradictory and complementary ideas. It's a training. You see, it is a very important thing. If we can do that, now at the present moment, the world is now full. You see, it's not our schizophrenic patients who are doing problems. The problem is being done by people with fanatical thoughts, people with overvalued ideas, people who are imposing their ideas on the masses, fundamentalist ideas, terrorist ideas. All these ideas are being imposed on the masses. Huh? Is it? Is it true? They are not called psychiatric patients. The people are doing that. The cult gurus or the leaders or the politicians and all, we don't consider them as psychiatric patients, but it is they who are actually disturbing the mindset of the whole people of the whole world. And to change that, you cannot do it otherwise unless you train the mind to think with complementary and contradictory ideas together. And mother said then we can be free from exclusivist thinking. Choose the word. The world is suffering from exclusivism. My idea is right. My theory is right. My orientation is right. What I think is right. The opposite idea is equally right. Unless we can teach this to our students, what we are witnessing around the world, these problems of fundamentalism or you putting on pressurizing their ideas onto the masses, this will not stop, and it will be the first step to go on the evolution of the cognitive consciousness. Just a beginning. You see, the higher mind is much higher than what I'm saying, but we can start that as a first step. We can start that. I think that I have a feeling joy that in this 150 years of Aurobindo, these are things. These are things not to talk about. You see, talking about bhakti and religion, all people are there. So there are many people to talk about that, but to talk about very concrete things. You see, we are not going to sermonize people. From Aurobindo perspective, your mother didn't want that. Mother never allowed cheap books to be sold in the railway stations. She didn't allow that. That you don't have to popularize things in that way. We have to come in education. It doesn't mean that you have to put Aurobindo name. It doesn't matter. Aurobindo work will always be done behind the scenes. Nobody will know who is doing the work. People who come to do and think they will have a great fanfare, they will have a great name. I tell them you are mistaken. Aurobindo work will be done by selected people, but will benefit the collectivity. But the work will be done by selected people. But the benefit will be going to everybody, to the whole collectivity. The benefit will go, but the work will be done by very selected people, and will be done behind the scenes. As in Savitri has said that, like a thief, na, who comes, Bangla jaghe bole chor shit kete ota, as a thief who comes, na, winding his way up, so nobody will know how the thief is entering the house from below and creating a tunnel like that. The truth will rise like that, and people will not know. While the wise men talk and sleep, while the wise men talk and sleep, the truth will go. So if you are wanting to share in this work, you have to take it for granted. It will be a selective work. Don't worry that many people are coming, but many people will be benefited. That is the more important thing. Not that many people are coming and that your name will not be there. Nobody will know, but that is not important. That is real surrender. That is real sacrifice. That is real surrender to the Supreme. God, what is this life? Let their theories, let their ideas, what is dream of the supermind. That is the most important thing for the world, and let that manifest. Otherwise, what is the meaning in this life? I think I have spoken a bit beyond what I should have spoken, not in time, but in speaking it too much. So I will just halt here. And if you have anything to add, Manan, if you have anything to add, you can add
Fantastic.
something. Hmm.
We are in time. In all the programs from Mother and Sri Aurobindo, we are always in time. So I think it's a very illuminating talk. You have clarified, I think, one of the major problems which we face in education and in higher education is to acceptance of contradictory ideas and to live with paradoxes. Um, and slowly, I think we are reaching a kind of a plane of consciousness, so to say, because in quantum physics, before the measurement, things are in superposition. So if things are in superposition, all sorts of infinite possibilities are there, and depending upon the intention, anyone can become the reality. So it is, I think, what Madam said in the beginning. It much depends upon our intention, what I intend to do, and on the basis of that, I can, rephrase or reframe my reality. And once it becomes a global reality, then there is, the key for perfect change possible. So I think I will just open now, because Madam is also there, and Soumitro is also there. So possibly questions, all our guests, you can unmute and you can ask questions. You can unmute yourself and you can ask questions directly. Opradim wants to ask.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So this is Manan. So namaste, Soumitra da. Namaste,
Ah,
Soumitra da. And thank you to Aditi and Jonathan and Shayna and Soumitra da, because I thought there was a lot of resonance across all the three sharings today, and on such a special day. I think it's important, and I think Soumitra da also highlighted that there is this churn which is going on, and different people are using different say expression, but in similar form and manner talking about this churn. And I think it's very important to focus on raising the consciousness, both at an individual level and also at the collective level. And I think this event also was very helpful in that. And Aditi, Dr. Aditi and I are actually very closely associated with the Delhi ashram. So, in that spirit, we would also offer and invite all of you to, visit the Delhi ashram sometime. And it would be very nice if, such initiatives can be scaled up and collaborated more actively, because I also have an interest in music, for example, and I was actually very keen to visit Shanti Niketan myself. So that's what I wanted to say. And the other thing is, Samita, that did highlight, I think it's important to have discussions on how to bring it, this amazing vision of Sri Aurobindo and the mother, which is also very practical in nature, to education, because I think the youngsters would not be satisfied with the old forms of education, because it's simply not going to suffice. So those are my thoughts, and I kind of wanted to pose this to maybe the panel if they wanted to share, and also Jonathan, what he thinks out there in Canada, maybe. So thank you again to the organizers, and I look forward to attending more of your events in the future. And please do visit Delhi Ashram whenever you get an opportunity. Thank you again.
Thank you. Who, ma'am, would answer this at the education level?
I think it was more of a sharing from his perspective, and that is what the need of the hour is. And that is exactly what my aspiration is also. And precisely that is why I'm working with the university where we have young people. And once you engage with them, you realize that they are not, of course, satisfied with what they are offered, but they don't know what to look for. So in the education field, what is missing is not so much obsession about the answer, but training them in a way to ask the right question. So fine tuning the art of questioning in itself is education, and then they can find their answer, because there is enough material in the world, but all they're looking for is a direction, and discussions and just having conversations with them helps them to explore on their own. So in essence, just holding the space for them, fine tuning their art of questioning, and then letting them lead their own way. That is how I see the role of education, especially at the university level, and that is what I wanted to share with the group as well.
Thank you. Anyone questions? Just a very quick point. In some universities in the US, they give marks. Marking is based on the quality of question and the questions, not on the learned content and the kind of e-assessment which is done, but it's based on the questions. The marking is done on the basis of the questions, quality of questions.
So
So that's a
Apratik
very
was wanting
important
to
point.
say something. Hmm.
Yes, Apratim.
Actually, I have a lot of questions, but keeping in mind of the time, I'll just ask a few. So before that, I must first express my gratitude that I have been able to witness this extraordinary evening. And so all the talks of Dr. Basu and Dr. Kaul, they were so illuminating, and the music rendition was on a different level. And of course, the singing of Mayukh and Bani as well. So I'm so glad to be part of here. So my first question is to Dr. Aditi Kaul, ma'am. Ma'am, you said that as we move towards harmony within ourselves, initially what we feel is that there is disharmony, right? So now at that very moment of disharmony, all the mind can feel is completely chaos. So how can we convince the mind that it is actually going in the right direction and not otherwise? So that's the question.
Yeah, I think the moment you said disharmony, the light just went off here. So it was really that expression of disharmony in action.
Yes, yes, truly.
See, it's not about convincing the mind so much. It is more of having an experience that when you realize what made you realize that there is disharmony,
Yep.
that is the experience which you have to hold on to. So there is a just I'll just yeah.
Yeah.
So when you started looking, you found that okay, these are the disharmonies. So there's a lens which helped you to view that.
Right.
So that is the lens where the real power, the real strength lies in. So that becomes your guiding force. And that becomes a tool with which you have to engage the mind. So it's always the higher principle working on the lower and pulling it up. So when that higher makes you see it, that higher also makes you transform it. So always holding on to the right pattern and not getting into that entanglement, but stepping back and just observing that entanglement and building in and putting in that force to resolve it. So that becomes your own process
So be with
of
the Sakshi consciousness, the witness.
inexperience. Yes, yes, it's a process in itself, but to at least mentally conceive the notion of witnessing and then experiencing it in your own way. So that becomes a process.
Right. Thank you so much, ma'am. If I may, can I ask another question
Quick,
to Dr.
uh,
Basu?
quick questions. We can take up. Yeah, go ahead.
If someone has a question before me, they can ask. I will ask that. Someone can raise their hand.
Um, any questions?
Yeah, I think Spring.
Who we have?
Yeah, ma'am, you can unmute yourself and
Yes,
ask the question.
you can unmute yourself and ask. Yes.
Thank you for this wonderful speech. I work with very small children. We were in a school inside Sri Aurobindo Society, and it was very interesting how, when you work with children, you can actually work on the contradictions before that arise before thought, and that is fantastic. Because in early childhood, this work is also very important. And I love the way you talked about psychic being the safety wall, and that is also something that how you can always point the children towards that safety valve. My so my guess is that early childhood also this work is extremely important. It's very valuable to do this.
Yes, because in children the psychic is in front. In
Right.
children the psychic is in front. So you can palpable. The psychic is palpable in children.
That is right. And so it is very, very interesting to do this work, because then your own adult psychic being also is brought,
Yes, yes. Children
right.
also stimulate. There is so much to learn from children, and they will also stimulate. And because they are bringing in from the, you see, the language is how it is forming, and from there is another level of consciousness. All the words are descending to them. So many things are happening in them. So where was
Right.
your school where you were working?
I was working in this Navakriti Sri Aurobindo Society Delhi branch. Navakriti. Yes, so the small children, but unfortunately it closed down before the pandemic. But I still work with children at home and around me, all kinds, all lots of children.
It's good. It's good.
Thank
Thank you. Any more questions, Morrison? Any questions? Um,
I really want to thank everyone for their wonderful contributions to this evening. Like, I really enjoyed Dr. Cole's interpretation of the Divine Mother and her cosmic ways and the way she explained different aspects. So it was really wonderful to even hear Jonathan and Shayna play such a wonderful piece. Like, it was a composition, like a very natural, free flowing style, which I really liked. And it had that kind of vibration where you felt that it's happening in the moment. So that was very important. And it didn't feel that it was like an act, it felt like it was a kind of a presence. So that itself was a very different experience altogether. And also, like, Dr. Basu's talk was really very in depth, and he went to very, very deep topics like the inconscient and how, like, the creation spring force and where the problem really lies. So my question is, like, also a very similar note that you said that at what point does this creative consciousness starts to manifest from the absolute? So, like, why does it do that? Like what causes it to do so?
When he starts his work,
Like, why
now
does the
this,
creative
uh, you see that,
consciousness want to
uh,
expand, like
uh,
want to be
is going to
everything?
the most difficult line, the first line of Savitri.
why, you see the how, when, where, all these things can be guessed, but why is very difficult. The only answer is in the Indian tradition is the lila. It's just the
Yes.
sport of God, the play of God. That's why, like a child plays with marbles with no other motivation but just the joy of playing. And Ananda of Sachidananda is a non-motivational bliss. You don't need any motivation to go there. It is there. It just exists for his own sake. So that's why that it is because of Ananda. Ananda is actually the value aspect of the reality. It is because Ananda is the value aspect. If Sat is the existential aspect, Chit Shakti is the practical aspect, but the value aspect is Ananda, the joy of everything. It's just for the joy that things are happening. And now, when it happens, you see, then again, that is also very different. We are talking about circular thinking, that one and many actually are always present. In one voice it is one, in another voice it is many. It's not like one sounded one big gong and then one suddenly became many. Ishwamitra doesn't describe things in that way. It's always the one is there and always the many is there. If the many is not there, the one will still remain. If the one remains and the many is not there, the many can still manifest out of the one.
Yes,
But
yes.
actually, they are always there, and it is from one poise you are seeing the one, another poise you are seeing the many. That's why in Savitri, two, three times he has used the word giant point. Giant point, that word is used. How can a point be giant? Because the point where the what you call the infinite and the finite, na? Finite becomes the infinite and the infinite becomes the finite. So in one, you see that very interesting that these two words that he uses, giant point. So he is talking about that point where you can be on this side or you can be on the other side. That is the
Yes.
expression of circular thinking.
Yes, I think one of the key things which you said is non-motivational bliss in terms of Ananda, and you also mentioned values because
Yes.
while I was reading David Bohm, uh,
Hmm.
there is this concept of infinity which is the scaling up concept of infinity, which we think of in terms of quantity, but at the same point of time there is this qualitative aspect of infinity also, which I think he mentioned or harped on. And this is exactly is beyond the transactional mode, though it expresses itself in the transactional mode, but it's a non-motivational this or another aspect, which is
Also,
the value
like, I
aspect.
had a question for Dr. Cole as well. Like, I wanted to say, like, because she stressed so much on surrender, and I personally do feel that surrender is very, very important for like the awakening or for existence in any form. So I just wanted to ask, like, if it's like, is surrender a natural state or one should really intend for it? Are we naturally surrendered from birth in a way?
I think before our mind enters and complicates things, surrender is a very natural process. But once the mind enters and gets lost in the multiplicity, forgetting the unity behind the multiplicity, surrender becomes difficult. So it's going back to the unity behind the multiplicity, which brings back a very conscious and a very natural surrender. And that is why when we spoke about, we brought in the element of effort, which is precisely for the lower nature and for the mind to turn towards the divine. So that is how I look at it.
Yes, that's wonderfully explained. Thank you.
One or two questions we can take, and before we do a prayer, and then we can.
I have another questions to Dr. Basu actually.
Okay.
Sir, as you said that the cognitive consciousness that we have put in transformation there. So is cognitive consciousness another layer of the mind, or is it like beyond the mind?
No, I'm talking about when I'm talking about evolution of cognitive consciousness, then Aurobindo, I'm referring to what Aurobindo has described as supracognitive planes, not the cognition at the level of the mind.
Okay.
But there are other levels of cognition, which we call supracognition or metacognition, whatever you call. They are not the usual cognition. So there's these fields which are opening up above the mind as supracognitive matrices. Of course, they are all matrices of consciousness force. It's Chit Shakti which is organizing these matrices everywhere from bottom to top. But at the mind, we deal with a certain level of cognition. When we are going up, we are dealing with cognition which is not dependent upon our rationality and our sensory perception. So it is that's why it is supracognitive.
So the elements from which we can bring this transformation, like we can read the books, the Vedas, the Upanishads, or we can listen to talks, listen to music. So these could be the elements. These can be the elements of transformation. So when we are contemplating or reflecting on something that is worldly, so isn't it the mind that gets transformed first, or is it like that the transformation directly occurs in that super like the cognitive consciousness state, and then it slowly comes down to the mind?
You see, transformation which Sherwin uses is a very technical word. It's not the way that we usually use the word. It's a very technical word where the consciousness is being transformed so that a new species can evolve.
Right.
And in doing that, the work of transformation has to work at different levels simultaneously.
Okay.
It has not only has to work at the level of the mind, but more important, and which is the mother's great contribution, it has to work at the level of not only of the body but of the cells. So mother worked there on cellular consciousness, which is very difficult for us to understand. A cellular will, cellular intuitivity. How do you understand it?
Yes.
So this working on the directly on the body on the cellular consciousness, because body is the base. If that is not transformed, everything will collapse. And that is different from that. You see, mind transformation, even it is easier. The most resistant part is the body. Body is very mind. You can get over a wrong idea and get yourself corrected by a correct good idea.
Yeah.
But the body you cannot change. Na? If you are having pain, you want to putting your will force to change it. You can do it easily. You can't do it. So working at the level of the body is very important. So that is something which is now coming, and I tell that it is meeting a resistance. The cancer is a resistance to this work. Cancer is a resistance to this kind of work. And the virus which has happened, this viral pandemic, is also resistant to the work, a particular resistance to the work of the cellular consciousness. So all these things, that why this pandemic becomes so important, because on the occult level, it is actually an attack, so that the cellular consciousness, that work gets what you call affected. So all these kind, but it is not that everything will become complicated. I'll talk about it on some other day. But it is very interesting thing
Sure,
that
sure.
how obstructions can happen at every level. I
I
see the
think this is a
pandemic
very
as
interesting
an
topic.
obstruction
Like,
like this.
probably we should discuss this in depth.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. I would love to.
Yes, I think with this, if there are any questions, you can ask. If there are
I
questions
would
in
want
Bengali
to
also, you
ask
can ask questions
Jonathan,
to.
like about the reference he made with Tantra and of the yantric symbol of the mother and the notes in music. So, like that reference, like was it his self created or did he get it from?
I think Jonathan
Jonathan,
is not there in the meeting anymore. I think he has some
yeah,
work, so he had to leave early. Leave.
yeah.
Okay, so that
So
was interesting. Does anyone have answer to that?
Yeah,
Is
music can
music?
come from a very high source of consciousness. You see, there's in India there's a term called Anahata Bani. Anahata Bani is music which doesn't strike a surface, so there is no sound. So in a very high above in consciousness, there is this Anahata Bani, and from there the great musicians bring down inspiration. You see, for the cognitive matrices, you have to have supra-rational ways of thinking, and one supra-rational way is inspiration. And the way of one great example of inspiration is that music that has been taken from the Anahata Bani, which is brought down by the great musicians to the world. So of course, it is something which is very high and can be brought down. You see, that kind of music is a different music altogether. It has been practiced. So there are other ways to access truth. If anybody asks me what is the greatest contribution of Indian psychology, the first thing I tell that there are other ways to access truth other than sensory perception and vision. And the first thing I tell about inspiration. And I give the example of Anahata.
Yes, that answers my question. Like, because I was thinking that this must be something it has a deep source.
Ah, yes, yes, yes.
and any more questions? If there are questions, one or two questions in Bengali, you can ask to Soumitroda as well. So um, if there are no questions, then we will probably come to a closure. Any more questions? Okay, I think there are no questions now. So I thank Soumitroda and Aditi ma'am and Apratim also, and all our organizers over here, and all those who have participated on
Yes, thank
Mother's
you.
birthday. Um, we hope that we will have a set two of this very soon, because as I said, this is a very important year, and there are a lot of changes taking place rapidly across the world as we speak. And so we hope that we will be able to put together another set of programs based on some of the topics which we have touched based on today. I will just end with a very simple um, kind of prayer written by Sri Aurobindo on Mother only. And with that, we end the program. The Mother is always with you. Put your faith in her. Remain quiet within and do with that quietude what has to be done. So, on that note, we thank everyone for joining, and good night from here.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really look
Thank
forward to
you.
the next one. Thank you.
Bye bye.